Om Stapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupini avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namah. So we are continuing our discussion on the foundation text of Indian philosophy, Mahabharata, and the Indian philosophy values. So today we are going to discuss a very important episode. It also constitutes one of the most philosophical, deeply philosophical and spiritual theme discussed and expounded in the Mahabharata. The name of that section is called The Song of a Butcher. Now, called Vyadha Gita. Vyadha in Sanskrit could mean a butcher or a hunter. And the song here means a great spiritual discourse in the form of a song, in the form of a poem. That's what it is. Vyadha Gita. It comes, those of you who may be interested later, you can refer to the text. It comes in the Vanaparva section of Mahabharata from chapter 2005 or 2006 to 205 to 206. Some part begins as a prelude in 205th chapter 205th. But the real episode discussion begins in 206th chapter, 206th chapter. It continues right up to 215th chapter. So almost like 10 chapters it covers in the Mahabharata Vanaparva section. So it is a discourse, a set of instructions given by sage Markandeya to Yudhishthira, the eldest brother, King Yudhishthira, the eldest of the five Pandavas. The story is very intriguing. It contains some very important instructions on Dharma, the idea of work as worship, who is a real spiritual seeker, who is a really spiritual enlightened person, and the teachings of ahimsa, non-violence, satya, and then, but this main emphasis is something very interesting. In fact, that is closely linked to the name of the instructor, the teacher, the acharya. And the teacher, as I mentioned, is by profession a butcher. A fat butcher sitting in a meat market happens to be a great teacher of an ascetic. So, a very learned person is a Brahmin. His name is Kausika. He leaves his home, leaving behind his parents, his children, and all those who are dependent upon him. A kind of premature renunciation. He was a learned person, but he wanted to be an ascetic, though, as we are going to find out, he was not mentally ready or mature enough to take to ascetic life. And as I mentioned, the central theme of the episode is, and for the most emphatic stress is on the idea that no duty is bad or inferior. Why? Because the butcher is the instructor. And going in the morning to the thick forests, hunting animals, bringing them to a market, and then skinning them. And in fact, the work of a butcher in ancient days, it is certainly not a very, spiritually, not a very pleasant duty. But the butcher teaches that he is actually a great teacher. He reveals himself to be a great teacher. No duty is good or bad by itself. It is the mind with which we perform the duty that makes a difference. Now the story goes like this. It happens in Mithila. Mithila is in today's Bihar state. And there, as I mentioned, a Brahmin young man who was very learned, he takes to ascetic life. He goes to a forest. He practices a lot of spiritual yogic disciplines. And as a result, he becomes very powerful. So those of you who have listened to our lectures or maybe read Yoga Sutras, you'll find that in the Vibhudipada, there is a mention of so many yogic powers that come to a yogi as a result of the practice of yogic disciplines. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, etc. Kriya, it begins with Kriya Yoga. Tapaswadhyaya is a Pranidhana Kriya Yoga in the Sadhana Pada, first sutra. So this man does a lot of meditation, a lot of pranayama, and as a result, he develops some yogic powers. Now the point is, if you are endowed with yama and niyama, which constitutes 10 important disciplines in yoga, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, called yama, shaucha, santosha, tapa, swadhyaya, is niyamas. So non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, non-possessiveness, purity of life, purity of mind and body, contentment, pure emotions, chastity of life, reading sacred scriptures, meditation on God, all these constitute the 10 disciplines. After you are fully established in all these disciplines, if you practice asana, pranayama, etc., pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, etc., then the powers that you develop as a result of yogic disciplines become a positive force. Like for example, if you are running a machine or a car, you need fuel. And a fuel will help you to run the machine properly. But a fuel which is misdirected can lead to destruction of the same machine. That could also be the result in the case of if a man is practicing yogi disciplines. If you practice yoga, if you practice meditation, if you practice Aldic for concentration of mind, all that, without getting established in self-restraint, kindness, compassion, you know what happens? These forces that you generate as a result of mental focus, discipline, meditation, etc., they will be directed in the opposite, they go in the opposite direction. They become not positive but destructive forces. So this man renounced his what you call grihasthasana, householders' duties and responsibilities, left his parents behind, went to forest and practiced meditation. And then what happened, one day he felt he's quite an accomplished yogi, and he sat under a tree. And then he was very happy because that's also one problem in yogi life, which I discussed in the Yoga Sutra lectures. If the mind is ready, then you get the feeling you have become a big yogi even before getting established even in the fundamentals of yoga. You can hear many stories of people who are taken to yogic life, spiritual life, ascetic life, who fall by the wayside as a result of immaturity. So in this case, this man sat under a tree. After many years of practice and meditation, he felt himself that he has become a highly accomplished yogi, and he sat under a tree and started meditating. At that time, he found there was a noise on the top branch of the tree. A crane and a crow, two birds, were fighting. So when they were fighting, some droppings, some dirt of the bird fell on him, perhaps maybe some twigs broke and fell on him, some leaves perhaps. Anyway, something happened, according to some stories. Actually, the text itself, I can read the text. The text itself says, "Tam aveksha tada krudha." That is the text. I can read the text here itself. So, Tam aveksha tada krudha samabadhyayada dvija brisham krodhabhibhudena balakasa nirikshata abadhyada cha viprena nyapadat dharani tale. That's a text. So, when he heard this noise coming from the top branch of the tree, Tam aveksha, he looked at the bird and he became very angry. Tata krudha samapadhyayata dvicha brisham krodhabhibhudena balakasa nirikshata. What happened, these droppings fell on his head. In the previous statement, uparishtacha vrikshasya velaka samniliyata taya purisham utsrishtam brahmanasya tadopari. So purisham means dirt, droppings of the bird. That's the idea. The text tells you. And if you are interested, you can remember it is the fourth verse of this particular section. Fourth verse. Anyway, so that we are going to discuss this verse one after another. So when this happened, this man became very angry. Now he should not have become angry at all. Of course, it is necessary. It is perhaps even it is important. It is our duty to feel annoyed when something happens, but that annoyance that should not go deep into your system. You cannot become an automaton or a machine when you become a spiritual person. We should remember that human beings get all their natural propensities and emotions get highly refined when you become a yogi. But you don't become a machine and you don't become an inert piece of stone. You will have annoyance, you will have displeasure when something wrong happens, and it is your duty to respond to that. This is very important. There is no moral neutrality in spiritual life. If you become morally neutral, then it is the opposite. It is the polar opposite of spirituality. You become sensitive when something goes wrong. You should react to it. You should rectify that. But the anger and annoyance should not go very deep into your system, because that will put our own mind, our own emotions in a state of imbalance. So in this case, in this Kausika Brahmana's case, what happened, he looked at them, sakrudha. He was very angry. He lost all his balance of mind because of his anger. And he looked at the birds, so much of anger and annoyance that the text tells you the birds fell dead. In some context it is said they were burned to ashes. But anyway, they fell dead by the power of his stare, full of anger. So what happened was, and then he became slightly disturbed. It should not have happened, because he was after all a good man. He was a kind of misguided or misdirected renunciation. He had left his place, job, his position, his household responsibilities when he was not ready for it. So, neglecting his own duties and responsibilities to his parents, the young man leaves his home apparently with a strong decision to become a mendicant. That's not proper. According to Hindu tradition, you should transcend your previous samskaras before you become an ascetic. When you become an ascetic, you transcend, you go beyond household, domestic connections and responsibilities, but you don't reject them, you go beyond. In his case, he forcibly rejected them. So what happened, So his mind was not ready. So he became angry. And so when he became angry, that anger completely disturbed his mind. So in other words, he lost his balance. So what happened is that the birds fell dead, and then in a way what happened was he felt very sorry, and then I shall come to the text, and as we proceed further we will discuss this. So the text begins like this. So it's a very huge text. So you remember in Mahabharata, the Vanaparva text, chapter itself, that book itself is quite huge. So the text begins like this. Kaschit dvijadi pravaro vedadhyayi tapodhanaha tapasvi dharmashilascha kausiko nama bharata. That's how it begins, this particular episode. So one, dvijadi means Brahmin by birth. That's a let's emphasis, dvijadi. Brahmin by birth, because he has the Upanayana Kriya called second birth. Vedadhyayi, so he has studied the Vedas. Tapodhanaga. So all these are important, especially in the light of what happens to him. He had to learn the basic lessons of spirituality, first from a humble housewife, and then from a butcher. That is the course of his spiritual evolution. But he then, at the beginning, the text, Vyasa writes, of course, the story is told by Markandeya to Yudhishthira. Kaschit dvijadi pravaro vedadhyayi tapodhanaha tapasvi dharmashilascha kausiko nama bharata. Uparishtacha. So then the story goes like that. He left his home, he violated his own primary obligations and responsibilities, he abandoned his parents, he did not seek their consent, and then he went to a forest. And then he practiced yoga disciplines and he became very powerful. So I want to tell you about this siddhi which I mentioned in the Vibhudipada of Yoga Sutras. So all these powers will come to a person when you practice these intellectual disciplines like concentration, meditation. Anyone can do this. If you go to gymnasium every day, your body develops certain powers, certain faculties, certain capabilities. Like that is a result of practicing exercises. Every day you are doing exercise in a gymnasium, physical gymnasium. Now if you do mental exercise, intellectual exercise, emotional exercise, in the mental gymnasium, that is our own mind, that mind also develops these qualities. They do not necessarily make you spiritual. They don't necessarily make you spiritual. But they certainly give certain faculties. Just as body is strengthened, mind also develops higher powers of concentration and focus. That happened to this man. And then he sat under a tree, Uparishtacha Vrikshasya Balakasam Nilinadeha. So one day he sat under the tree, and there were birds, Taya Purisham Utsrishtam Brahmanasya Tadobari. So these birds, this bird droppings or twigs of tiny twigs of the branches of the tree fell on him. And seeing this, he became angry. Tam aveksha tata krudha samapadhyayada dvija brisham krodhavibhudena belakasa nirikshata apadhyata cha viprena nyapatad dharani dale. So all these twigs, everything fell on his head and some of them fell on the earth also. So when he looked at them, they all, these droppings fell on him, and he looked at them, and at that time these birds also fell dead on the earth. Both crow and crane both died on the spot. After this, he got up from that seat, and then he starts walking. So what he did, ityuktva bahusho vidwan gramam bhaikshaya samsidakha. So he felt a bit sorry at this incident. The two birds died because of his cold, angry stare. Grame suchini prajaran kulani bharadashabha pavishtastat kulam yatra purvam charidavamstu saha dehi idi yajamanosu tishthetyukta striya tataha tishtha ityuktaha. This is an important turning point in the entire episode. So he gets up from where he was sitting, meditating, starts walking. Remember, he was not walking in the same place. From where he was sitting, from under the tree where he had literally, indirectly though, killed the two birds, he got up and walked several miles, went to a village. Nearby village means maybe 10 miles away. That is nearby in ancient times. From the thick forest where you are sitting under the tree, the village will be several miles away. So the text will tell you, Gramam Bhaikshaya Samsidaha. Bhaikshaya means begging. They're just like, among the Franciscan ascetics in medieval times, alms for St. Francis. Like that, in India in ancient times, of course this is much earlier, they had this tradition of monks and ascetics. Not necessarily monks, but ascetics. All ascetics are not necessarily monks. They used to go from place to place in the villages, and they will stand in front of a house and will utter this Bhavati Bhiksham Dehi. Please give me alms. This idea. This is what they do. Very similar, maybe this tradition was later on practiced by the medieval Christian monks also, Franciscans, that is, alms for St. Francis. And you can see similar scenes, surprisingly, in the Russian Orthodox tradition. In the 19th century work of, it's an autobiographical work, which I referred to on many occasions earlier. In the Way of a Pilgrim, you find the humble pilgrim was a semi-literate person, not well educated. He, after learning about Jesus' prayer, by listening to a sermon from a priest, St. Paul's first epistles, he wanted to learn Jesus' prayer. Then he was going in search of somebody who could teach him. Finally, somebody taught him. And then he wanted to go to Jerusalem on a pilgrimage. On the way, we were walking towards, of course he didn't cross the Middle East, he didn't come to the Middle East, but he was walking in Russian steppes. So he enters the home of a general. The story is set in the mid-19th century, Russia, in the life of a Christian pilgrim. So he enters the house of a military general, and he was absent. So his family received him, gave him alms, and he rested for 2-3 days, and then he continued his journey. So giving alms or seeking alms was a common practice in many traditions. Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, and many of these ancient traditions. Seeking alms was a common thing. So this man also did the same thing. So pravishtas tat kulam yatra purvam charidavamstu saha dehi idi yajamanaha. So he said bhavati bhiksham dehi, that's the idea. He mentioned, he uttered this word, please give me alms. Standing at the doorstep in front of a house he just uttered, please give me alms. He may have uttered more than once, but after some time he heard a voice coming from inside the house. Tishtha ityuktaha. He was told to wait. Please wait. It is a very polite voice. Please wait. So the lady, a housewife, she told him without coming outside because she was engaged in some of her own important responsibilities. Early morning she was taking care of her own ailing husband and her own parents. So he said, I'm busy now, please wait for a minute. I'm coming out, he said. Now, of course, I'm not I'm not discussing every single verse. It's a huge episode, spread over several chapters. Now, how this man reacts to that humble request, please wait, that came from inside the kitchen of the house. He said, Kimidam bhavadittum mam tishtha ityukta varangane. How dare you ask me to wait? This was his response. So the humble housewife asked him, Tishtha, please wait. Instead of, with all humility, accepting her request and waiting there, he got suddenly angry. Kimidam bhavadittum mam tishtha ityukta varangane. How dare you ask me to wait? Varodham kritavati na visajjitavatyayasi. So why did you ask me to wait? You should not do that. Okay, and he became weak, he became very angry. That is what the text implies. He became extremely angry. Now, here the narrator, Markandeya Rishi, the sage Markandeya, who is instructing Yudhishthira, says Markandeya Uvacha. So the narrator says, Brahmanam krodasantaptam jvalantamiva tejasa dushtva swadhi manushyendra santapurvam bhajobravid. Here the story takes a different direction. The narrator, that is the main instructor of the episode, tells all of us. Now, the lady felt this ascetic was becoming so angry. He was losing his balance. Jvalantami over here was like a fireball. He was sitting there, full trembling. You can imagine. So, first of all, if he was a real yogi, if he had left his home with his parents' blessings, if he had a natural evolution in life, means you do your duty, your responsibilities as a household, you do all that. And then, as a natural part of evolution, it's an evolutionary process. I mean, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and then Moksha, the fourth, that is the Paramapurushartha. Instead of gradually evolving towards the higher level of spiritual search, he jumped across many middle levels. He was trying to get double promotion. From a young, ambitious, strong-willed, energetic young man, he wanted to use the energy and enthusiasm that is a Rajoguna, is called in spiritual life also. So what happens, he had not developed a mind, the patience, that we call yama and niyama. So any kind of yogic practice, spiritual discipline, should be practiced along with or after getting fully accomplished yamas and niyamas. When you are fully established in ahimsa, or when you are fully established in niyama, that is santosha, that is contentment, then what happens is all the negative forces will be completely restrained. when you practice ahimsa, the energy resources that you generate as a result of yogic practices, it will not flow in the negative direction, because the channel flowing towards himsa is blocked by practicing ahimsa. And when you practice asteya and aparigraha, and then practice that is asana and pranayama pratyahara, what happens is the extra energy and enthusiasm generated by the practice of asana and pranayama, the extra energy, the vital forces will not be directed towards negative channels. They could be directed towards positive channels. But one condition, they should be fully established in yamas. That's a very important thing. So this man was not fully established in yama niyamas. So Markandeya says, Brahmanam krodha samtaptam, Chulantam, he was burning with anger, and he had lost his balance. Drishtva sadhvi. The word sadhvi is used in this verse. Sadhvi is a word used, it is a great positive adjective, a great quality, a woman who is fully established in her own motherly qualities, in her own pure love and compassion. Every woman can become the embodiment of the most sublime spiritual qualities. There is the potential in every woman. That's an important tradition. That's why in Indian tradition, Ubadhyaya Dashacharya Acharya tu Shadampida Sagasrenadhigam Madhu Gauravena Adirichide. According to Manu, a mother is the most respectable person in an household. She is more than 1,000 times as respectable, as honorable, deserving respect and honor than father. That's the idea behind it. Anyway, this is a long verse. If you have doubt, you can ask during interaction. So that is the honor, that's the high position of a woman. This lady was such a woman. As a wife, she was always compassionate, helping his own husband in carrying on the household duties and responsibilities. As a mother, she was taking care of her children. As a daughter, she was taking care of her ailing parents. So such a lady, this to a Swadhi Manushendra, Santapuram Pajobravid, the lady, she was still not visible outside. The voice came from inside the home. Shandu Marhasi me vidwan, Bharta me daivatam mahat, Sachabik Shudidak Srantaka Prapta Susushido Maya. She said, my husband is ill, he's sick. So for me, the primary responsibility as an housewife is to take care of him, his husband, because he was ill. And that's my first duty. I was engaged. And she also had her own sick parents. She was busy taking care of their needs and so on, early morning. So therefore, I could not immediately attend to your needs, because in the morning, when these ascetics used to go from villages in ancient times, they will come outside the forest, go visiting homes in the villages. Early morning they will go and they will utter Bhavadi Bhiksham Dehi. At that time the housewife will come and some auspicious little food offering they will give with all respect, saying Namaste. And they will bless, the ascetics will bless them and they will go away. This is a normal tradition. It's still happening in many places in India, not everywhere, but in some of the less urbanized parts of some parts of India, especially northern states perhaps. So, and she said, excuse me, I was busy, engaged in my own household duties. Now, in response to this, Kausika, the ascetic, says, Brahmanana giriyamsu giriyamste padikkritaha krista dharme vartanti brahmanan ban manyase. avamanyase. So Brahmanan avamanyase. So you are insulting Brahmins. So the word Brahmana here can be two meanings. One is in ancient times, because the social structure, you'll naturally attract respect. Being part of a social structure, ancient societies, you can see. Even right till the abolition of peerage in England, maybe some of our own listeners like Bobby called me to say. Before, it's still not abolished, but still there. So there were certain privileges attached to the hereditary privileges attached to peerage, marquis, lords and all that. So something similar to that also prevailed in ancient India. So by virtue of your being born in a family or in a tradition, you become worthy of special respect. It cannot be justified at all in the light of modern American egalitarian values. That's why America blissfully escaped and moved 3,000 miles of Atlantic and built a new home in this country. That's a different matter. But anyway, in ancient India, it's still a practice. So that's why this man says, Brahmana giriyam saha, giriyam ste patikradaha, risadharme vartanti, Brahmanan avamanyase. What Brahmins are not good? Your husband is greater than the Brahmins? The guest? Actually, this man, it shows, he was not also well read and well informed about the basic teachings of Srutis and Smritis, Dharma Shastras. Dharma Shastra actually means like do's and don'ts. There are innumerable Smritis and Dharma Shastras. So all these Dharma Shastras, Manu, Yajnavalkya, Parashara, Narada, Vyasa, even the author of the Mahabharata, Vyasa himself has written Vyasa Smriti. These all called, there are books of rules and regulations, more like ancient constitutions. Most of them are in verses. Now, in all these Dharma Shastras, it is clearly stated that the duty of a housewife is towards her husband, parents, children, and the immediate surroundings. That's first duty. Then only outside. That's why Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, all these you find. Aditi Devo Bhava comes at the end. Aditi is important, guest is important, but that's not the first duty. So this man's knowledge of his own canons, his own philosophical, spiritual literature was not adequate. That's why Brahmanana giriyamsu giriyamste padikradaha krisadharme vartanti Brahmanan avamanyase. Now look here. These thoughts, according to one interpretation, he did not utter. And according to another interpretation, Brahmana uvacha, that is the statement in the Mahabharata text. But Mahabharata is such a huge book also as commentary. The commentary, there is a view, one of the commentaries, this person, this ascetic did not speak in so many words, but these thoughts flashed in his mind. That is one interpretation in the commentary. Now what happened, the lady immediately made a statement that is a very important turning point in the entire story. Naham balaka viprashe teja krodham tapodhana. Look here, I am not crane or crow. No, the episode in the morning happened several miles away. The yogi sat under the tree, meditated, and the birds disturbed his meditation, and some twigs fell on his head. According to the text, some bird droppings fell on him, and he felt annoyed. He became very angry. He looked at the two birds, full of anger, and in that anger, the birds were burned to ashes, or they dropped dead. This happened several miles away. From there, he had walked the forests. We already mentioned He had already walked several miles into the forest, into the cave, into the village. So, how did the lady come to know of this episode? I mean, burning the two birds. There was no way. But that actually intrigued his mind. Naham balaga viprasya. Look here, I'm not a bird that you can burn to ashes. Krodham tyaja. Give up your anger. Tapodhana. You are full of tapa. You are full of austerity. You have done a lot of austerities, ascetic practices. You have done so much of ascetic practices. Tapodhana he addresses. But then krodham tyaja. Give up all this anger. I am not a bird you can burn to ashes. The humble housewife responded to this ascetic. Anaya kruddhaya drishtya kruddha kim mam karishyasi. So what will you do? Do you think with your angry stare, angry look, you can burn me the way you burned the helpless birds in the morning? What will you do by getting angry with me? Navajana meham vipran devaistulyan manasvinaha. I understand, I do appreciate, I do respect all great ascetics. I did not insult ascetics. Because this man accused the lady of not showing respect or reverence to ascetics. Grihastha dharme vartanti. You are, in the previous verse, he said, you are practicing Grihastha dharma, means you are an householder. It is your duty as an householder to respect and revere and take care of ascetics. And tum brahmanan avamanyase, you are insulting, you are showing disrespect to Brahmins. Brahmins were ascetics in that sense. The response came from the humble lady. See, look here, I know it's my duty to show them respect. Why are they respected? The only reason why they are respected is they do certain things which normal householders normally cannot do, because they have to take care of their parents, children, their different relatives. So that will not give them enough time to turn attention to meditation or introspection, some of the subtle spiritual disciplines. So ascetics, they give up all the social obligations, domestic obligations, family obligations, and they renounce everything and then they take to spiritual life. So they have so much of time. So they do pay a heavy price for taking up this ascetic life. So naturally, they deserve respect. It's not, today you find, it is money that earns you respect. So even when we accept the fact that this is basically in contrast to the principles of egalitarianism and the principles of equality, still you have to remember, they were respected not for wealth, they were respected for their learning and their ascetic practices. And it's far better to respect somebody for their ascetic practices than respecting them for their money, which they may use for terrible purposes. That may even turn them into demons. So you have to remember. So even if you use any yardstick, you can say this system that we are dealing with right now is far superior to a system where money wins you respect. If you don't have money, then you don't deserve any recognition. So that's a point to remember. This man himself admits that he should be respected because he's an ascetic. The argument can be accepted. If a person is found to be a practitioner of the highest moral values, why do we respected man like Lincoln than maybe many others. The reason is Lincoln in many ways represents and he represents it is a higher set of values, idealism, self-sacrifice, all this. That's why he is not asking you to respect him, but such people do deserve respect. So the criterion for respectability in this context, even in the words of the yogi who did not really show the real qualities of a yogi, even according to him, the criterion for respectability is these ascetic practices. That's what is implying the previous statement. But the lady teaches him a great lesson. Naham balaka viprashe tyaja krodham tabodhana. You are a great ascetic, but give up this anger. And again, I am not a bird, I am not a crane, I am not a crow or a crane that you can burn to ashes. Anaya kruddhaya dushtya kruddhakim mam karishaji. What will you do? What can I do if you get this angry like this? You can't burn me like the way you burned a bird in the morning. Navajana meham vipran devaistulyan manasvinaha, etc. And then she continues her pleadings to be excused. Aparadhamimam vipra kshantum arhasi me anagha janami tejo vipranam mahabhagyam chatimatam. So she says, please forgive me, for I could not come out of my kitchen, I could not come out of my home and give you bhiksha immediately. I asked you to tishta, wait. So please excuse me for this error. That's how she continues. Anyway, so the point that we want to make in this context is, of course, as we go forward, he finally understands the lady is a great person, highly enlightened, and he asked her to forgive him for getting angry. And that is another important quality. This man got angry, but when he understood that there is a great truth in what the lady told him, he did not get more angry. Rather, that made him turn his attention inward. He introspected and he understood he made a terrible mistake by getting angry with the birds in the morning and also with this lady that is who is standing in front of him. So he asked for forgiveness, then asked her, who taught you this great wisdom? How did you know that I have done this terrible thing, burning or killing these birds in the morning by looking at them? How did you know about this? She said, well, I don't practice any of the yoga disciplines that you have done for years, meditation and all that. But I do my duty. And what is my duty? Taking care of my household, people, parents, husband, children, and other members of the family. So I'm a humble housewife. So I do my duty. And for me, my duty is my path, my road to my liberation. This was the lesson that she gave him. And then he asked her, could you tell me who is your guru? Who taught you all these great lessons? She said, well, should I tell you who is my guru? And she told him, my teacher, my guru, is not here, he is far away. He is sitting in a meat market. And you go and meet him. Of course, he at that time, maybe he did not understand who was the guru, who was the person he was being directed to. But finally he reached the place, the name of the person, Vyadha. Vyadha is a hunter, a meat seller. A fat, strong, huge person sitting in a meat market with a huge knife, cutting meat and selling his meat. And he reached there. And when he reached there, this man told him, "Oh, you are sent by the lady?" So you have to remember there's this long distance between the thick forest where he was sitting for meditation, where the episode of burning the birds took place, to the village where he met that housewife while asking for alms. And from there, it's a long distance, the meat market. It's a long distance. And finally, when he made his way to the meat market, following the directions, it's a long distance. Seeing him, the meat seller, Vyadha, told him, "Oh, you are sent here by the lady, that person." Immediately he understood that this man also is a spiritually enlightened person. And then he told him, Vyadha told him, "Please wait. I have few customers waiting for me. After sending them away, I will attend to your needs." And he sent them away. He may have to sit late in the evening, and he closed his shop, took him to his home. And then after reaching the home, he asked, "You wait again?" And the Vyadha, the maid seller, did not start a conversation for some time. He had to do his own duty. He bathed his own parents. Maybe he was staying alone and he bathed his own parents, looked after their needs. Then finally he called this ascetic. So he said, "Abhivadaye tvam bhagavan swagadam me dvijottama aham vyagro hi bhadram te kim karomi prasantitvam." So look here, I pay my obeisance to you. What do you call pranams? The abhivadaye mean doing pranam, namaste, something like that. And so I want to pay my respects to you. Please tell me what you want me to do. This is how Vyadha Gita begins. The whole episode begins. It's a grand episode. So I have to remember, on the one hand, it gives you glimpses of a very refined higher civilization, even in the midst of a strong hierarchy. So on the one hand, there is this multi-layered society, different layers, one above the other. But at the same time, connecting all these layers, there is this thread of spirituality. The Vyadha, the hunter, the meat seller, himself becomes a supreme teacher of an ascetic, learned Brahmin who was a scholar of Vedas and Vedantas and who had taken to mendicancy prematurely, and he is corrected by this Vyadha. And before that, he had to go to the intermediary stage of being spiritually directed by a humble, a simple housewife, who herself said, "I am not a yogi, I don't know anything, I do my duty." That's all. That's what made me spiritually enlightened. So a very wonderful episode. We'll discuss this. We'll continue to discuss this discussion in the next session. You can have interaction. Most welcome. Thank you.
This idea of the hierarchy being upended by the spiritual instruction, these class reversals are common in Western satires and in theatricals, but not in epics like this. This is remarkable stuff. So it suggests, as you closed, that the civilization was refined, even though it had social striation. And I think that's the point of the fact that the Kausika was immature in his spiritual development. Is that the way we're to understand it? That he was premature?
Yeah. That's true. So that's true. So on the one hand, he was he was premature and he was not fully equipped to take to ascetic life. But at the same time, he allowed himself to be corrected by the humble housewife. That doesn't happen unless you have evolved to some extent. That's a very important point. This man was not angry when she told him that I'm not a bird that you can burn as you did in the morning. That did not make him angry or annoyed. Rather, it had a corrective effect on him. He was learning, he was evolving, he was completely spiritually transformed when he came to know this lady's humble, simple housewife standing in front of him is spiritually far more advanced than he himself. And he had a spiritual maturity again to allow himself to be corrected by her. So he was arrogant at the beginning, but the arrogance melts away. And that's the effect of his spiritual practices. So spiritual practices may not make you highly evolved at one go, but when you get an opportunity to be corrected, this background of early spiritual disciplines will help you. Yeah, I made a mistake. That comes to you, that feeling comes to you because of your own spiritual evolution. So he was not fully evolved, but he was certainly evolved. Otherwise, he cannot be transformed, he cannot be corrected. He will not be willing to go all the way to the Vyadha's place. And he will not ask you, who is your guru? I want to go and get more spiritual enlightenment. So he had the humility to admit his own mistake, the fact that he himself made a terrible blunder. And the lady, the humble housewife standing in front of him is far superior to him. And again, when he went to the meat seller's place, he was ready to wait there in the meat shop till evening. Then this man closed his shop, went home with him, and there in his home he was asked to wait further. And then only he opened. What can I do for you? Abhivadi Tuam Bhagavan. Swagadam. So he says, Swagadam, welcome. He says welcome much later. But he had the patience to wait. That shows his greatness. That would not have happened unless you had practiced some spiritual disciplines. Okay, that's the point. Does it make sense, Bobby?
Yes, I have a question about the symbolism possibly of the crane and the crow
Yeah.
specifically. Because there may be something I'm missing, but to me the crane flies high and far, and the crow is more of a neighborhood character.
Yeah.
So they occupy symbolically the same positions and social standing as the characters.
Yeah, that's true, because the cranes fly very high and the crows almost the level of human habitation, they don't fight.
And in the story, they both
they were sitting on the same branch and fighting, Of course, in a way we can say it's mentioned in the text proper. What is mentioned here is, balaka. So it could be simply birds in that sense. Crane and crow, that is what is mentioned in some books, but it is the birds, we can say birds, that's all. Balaka in that sense, yeah.
Well, they're both instructive and they both...
Yeah, in any case, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vishnu Sahasranama, please continue.
Yes, Swamiji. That was in the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
You'll be talking about that in the future lecture?
Yeah, later on, there is, of course, itself in the form of a dialogue. So Bhishma gives this instruction and Vishnu Sahasranama is part of it. And maybe at some point later, yeah. Because, Vishnu Sahasranama has got a commentary Bhashya, Shankaracharya's Bhashya is there. Vishnu Sahasranama Bhashyam. The Bhashya is there. The Bhashya, the commentary, explains these 1000 names of Vishnu Sahasranama. So maybe the episode can be just briefly discussed at some point in future. Okay? We can consider that as a possibility. Thank you.
Sorry.